This presentation will be on how to make a video game, specifically Clone Wars Adventures. I'm going to kind of take you guys through a sneak peek, sort of behind the scenes of what it takes to make a game. I'm from Sony Online Entertainment. I'm Kelsey McNair. I'm the art director of Clone Wars Adventures. I was supposed to have someone with me here, my producer, Todd Carson. Unfortunately, he was on a different flight than I was, and his flight got canceled. And I'm the introvert artist, so... just real quick, who here has played Clone Wars Adventures? Cool. Quite a bit of you. So for those that haven't, I'm just going to go ahead and play the launch trailer so you can kind of see what the game's all about. All right. So when we start out developing a game, these are kind of the stages that we go through. We'll start out with a game pitch, and what that basically is you know, it's a group of designers, artists, programmer, usually a producer, and they kind of come up with an idea for something that they want to make a game out of. So that's the first stage, and then we move through to building a team. So we start with that initial group of people and kind of expand on that and round things out, and then we have to make a prototype. That's the most important stage. If you can't make a prototype, you can't make a game. That's your foundation. After the prototype, we go into full production, which has a couple of phases before we move to launch. There's an alpha and a beta. Alpha, basically, we're looking for feature complete. That means that every feature that we want to launch with needs to work. And then beta is the phase where we go through and we debug the game. We look for all the problems that we may have implemented over the course of time and try and make the game run really smoothly. And when all the bugs are worked out, at least as best as we can, it's time to launch the game. With a game like Clone Wars Adventures, since it is played online and we update the content routinely, we have live updates. I'm going to go through each of these phases. So the game pitch. Like I said, this is a small group of people. They brainstorm the ideas. Then once the idea is founded, there's some research and development. Then the design pitch is documented, and that kind of goes up to whoever is going to be funding the game. So, with Sony Online, it goes up to our president, and everybody signs off, and we kind of move forward. And then towards the end of that pitch process, there's some core technology that's been established that we're going to use to build out the game and run it. So nobody's probably seen this. These are a few images of when we were just kind of throwing around the idea of making a game like Clone Wars Adventures came to be. We started out with this Clone Wars Online. You can see it's definitely has more of like a whimsical look to it. It's not necessarily true to Clone Wars because we hadn't decided to go that direction yet. So then we did, start working with the Lucasfilm people and, decided that we were going to move towards Clone Wars. That was going to be the game. So we did a lot of research. We watched all the episodes that we could, and we got to work. So this is a synopsis of the original pitch. I'm not going to read it. It's a lot of information, but it kind of gives you a generalized idea of what we were going for. We wanted a game that was going to cater to the core audience that really enjoyed the Clone Wars cartoon show. We wanted to make sure that it had a good feel for what Star Wars fans expect. We wanted to have a variety of different types of games between like mini games and combat games that would be in 3D, and a world that you could explore with pets and housing. We had 4 key themes that we wanted to hit on. Compete was one of those. We wanted to make sure that the game had a competitive element to it, and we wanted to accomplish that through 3D games, 2D games, and then some classic style cantina games, as we call them, and using leaderboards to showcase the competitive aspect. And we wanted you to be able to customize. We thought that was going to be a huge component of the game, and it really is. players love customization, as we were hoping, and we put in lots of ways to do that through character customization, player housing. You can build your own lightsaber. We've got pets that have different customizations and vehicles and items. We wanted you to be able to socialize. Obviously, that's an important aspect of being able to play with your friends and really enjoy all of the aspects of the Clone Wars together. And we wanted you to be able to adventure. At launch, we didn't have a combat minigame where you could actually take your player character into the game and fight. And that's something that we added in later. And I feel like that, while that came late, it really rounded out what we wanted to accomplish with the adventuring. So our core technology, we had released a game called Free Realms, and we had built the engine for that game in-house. So we decided that rather than create something brand new, we'd be able to save ourselves some time and effort to use the Deep Engine, as it was called. And then all of these icons up here are different software packages that we have used. We use Maya 3D for our modeling. We use Photoshop for our texturing. A lot of our mini games are Flash-based. Our designers use like Access Database and Excel and ActionScript. So after you get that pitch done, you got to build the team. The team is producers, artists, designers, programmers, and the audio guys. Producers, you got General Grievous up there, definitely managing the team. Got to make sure everybody's on task and moving towards all of our milestones. The schedules are important. And then the designers, there's a few different types of designers. So the content and story designers, they're the people who write all of the dialogue and the story and make the game have some sort of a context. We've made sure that we really stay true to the canon for most of the story in the game. And we always work with LEC to make sure that everything fits. And then on the mechanics side, these are the guys that sort of figure out how all the math works and how when you're going to fight something with a lightsaber, it's going to do this much damage over time to make sure that everything's in balance. Mechanics guys are incredibly important to the sort of what's under the hood that the programmers end up implementing. And that's what the technology group does. Those are the programmers. They build the engine and maintain it. They do the client and the server. So the client is what the end user uses, the player. And then the server basically is the hub of communication between that end user and the server. And then they also make all the tools. So the way that we take all those third-party programs like Maya and Photoshop that we develop the art assets, they make functions that we can take those things and put them into the game. And they also make the tools for the designers so that they can populate the world. And then the tools that our quality assurance or game testers would use to report the bugs. And then tools that our customer service will use to interact with players. And then art, that's my department. We do concepts and storyboarding, which that's basically anything that's just a sketch or something that's trying to establish visually how a game is going to be played. We make the environments, those are the different hubs in the game or the player housing. Our character artists will make the player characters and all the customizations and items. They need the non-player characters, and that includes all the iconic characters that you find in the game from Clone Wars. And then we have technical artists who do the rigging and animation. We have minigame artists that do the more two-dimensional icons and images that you find in those. And then the UI, the user interface. Those are the things that you interact with to get to the marketplace or launch any of the minigames. And see a couple of concepts that didn't really get used for much, but they were fun. And the audio team, we've got a great audio team, and you know, if you go into the game, you'll know that it just really feels immersive, like you're in a Star Wars environment. Everything feels very true to the license. So step 3, making the prototype. So to make the prototype, this is an example of a design flow. It's basically just a chart that says, you know, when I do this, what's going to happen next, and how's it going to go, and where do I get to play a game. This is what a game coder looks at all day. Not much fun. And that's a server terminal. So this is what our technology guys have to look at. Pretty boring stuff. Some early concept art that our artist did for some of the iconic characters. Kind of a baby Yoda. And these are some concept pieces for, you've got some different Clone Trooper customizations up there and some different player wearables. That upper right is actually a piece of a storyboard, and the Jedi hallway in the middle there, and then some towers from our Republic Defender Tower Defense game. So the storyboard that we did first for the prototype basically was this exact storyboard, and we wanted to just kind of capture in concept what the flow of the game would be like. So I'm just going to go through these, and you can kind of get a feel for what we were trying to accomplish. And if you've played the game, I mean, you've seen these scenes. We wanted to have interaction with NPCs in order to launch mini games. So you know, you've got Mace Windu up there, and which would launch our tower defense game, Republic Defender. Very early concept for that. And we wanted you to, you know, explore through the hub in order to launch the other mini games. Go into the hangar and play Starfighter. And you talk to Anakin to do that. And a very early concept of a mini game selection, stage selection screen. And the Starfighter early concept. And then, you know, to round it all out, we wanted you to go to your home and go into your trophy room and see the things that you've accomplished by playing those mini games. Be able to see your pets there and invite your friends in. So here's a few more pieces of concepts that, you know, we did very early on to try and establish some of the look and feel for wearables and customizations. And the war room. And the Jedi training room. And the early art asset creation, you know, we've got some of the droids that were used in Republic Defender and some of the towers, and then a couple of ships in the Jedi Starfighter, as well as the prototype for the human male. And then during this phase, we started working on the special effects and just some examples of those there. Some early level design, very early Synopsis, looks nothing like that now. And then some aspects of level building in very early form. And then the UI. If you play the game, you know the UI doesn't look like this anymore, but this is what it looked like during the prototype. And same the UI for Starfighter and Republic Defender. So when we completed the very first sprint, which we call a sprint, is basically a term for a milestone that we use. This was the first movie. You got Anakin Skywalker. So you can see this is very rough. I mean, we're really just blocked out trying to make things start to function. I mean, we're showing right here that the UI, you know, it does have some form to it. It's you know, it works, but it's very rough. It's very early. So we have the camera for the player attached to a rail, and this is, you know, the animations aren't in place, but this is showing, you know, what it looked like very early. So using the click to move mechanic, the player is moving around, following the mouse. And walk around, blow up a droid. I mean, this is really, what we look at when we're first getting into the development.
Why are there doors in the temple anyway?
What's that?
Why are there doors in the temple?
That's a good question. We just wanted to have some fun and blow some droids with them.
Make it fun putting doors in the temple.
Yeah. Yep.
Clever.
So I got to warn you, if you have a tendency to get motion sickness, you may want to turn away for this. This is the prototype rail camera for the Starfighter minigame. It's going to start moving. So, kind of like one of those fake roller coaster rides you can go on. And then this is like very, very early rough Republic Defender. I mean, the special effects aren't firing from the appropriate locations. The droids are all looking pretty rough. But this is just proof of concept, and this is really how we establish the prototype, by going through this level of iteration. So just to kind of show the flow of the Starfighter prototype, this was the design document that was presented, and our designers took images from the show, and they basically wrote out a story as to how they wanted the first mission to play out. So we wanted to use actual episodes for reference, so that you could relive those experiences from the show in the game. So we wanted to pick the Shadow of the Malevolence arc to try to do that. So you can just kind of see the progression here, where the designers wanted you to flow through, and we wanted to recreate that in the game. So this is the prototype video for Starfighter, version 0.1. It's not even version 1. Doesn't look like much. But this was how we could establish the placement of assets in space to try and get the feel accurate. We wanted to have trails coming off of the Starfighter and give you a feel of motion. And then we started building out some of those iconic assets that are used in that level. So you've got the medical station, and then you've got the Malevolence with its gigantic cannon. So here's some of the work in progress on the assets. This is obviously a more final looking piece. This thing is just massive. That art asset is just loads and loads of polygons. It's huge. And then this was the final. So, if you played Starfighter, you've seen it. Yeah, I mean, it came a long way from just kind of moving around and not a whole lot of editing. So then we went on to the prototype Milestone Storyboard. So what we did here was, where you had seen the last storyboard, it was all 2D concept images. Now we've taken it and we've replaced it all of those concept images with actual images from the game. And we did this to show that we met all of the different goals that we were trying to establish in the prototype. So you can kind of get a feel for this. I'll go through it because I don't know. How am I doing on time? Okay. So yeah, we wanted you to be able to, interact with other players and adventure around. Wanted to have the iconic screen wipe that you see in all the Star Wars movies when you go from place to place. And then we wanted you to interact with key characters to launch the minigames. And and some early UI for the stage selection, and some more, final polished shots of Synopsis compared to what we saw earlier. And we implemented the marketplace, UI stuff, and we actually had in the prototype a way to get around the hub using a map on the wall. That feature didn't make it live, unfortunately. And we had more expressive mini-maps that we didn't end up going forward with in the end, but this is what they look like. Again, talking to Anakin to launch Starfighter, and the Starfighter selection screen. So, let's see. Playing a stage of Starfighter, winning, getting an achievement, you earn the trophy, and then you want to go back and check out that trophy in your house. So you go into your house, which house doesn't look like that anymore. And you go into your trophy room, and there's your trophy. And we completed the prototype, so we got our trophy. That actually is hanging on the wall outside my office. So then we go into full production. Like I said, that prototype phase is mission critical. If you can't make a prototype, you can't make a game. It has to play. So now we went through and started to, flesh things out, make it feature complete. We started to add in more mini games. We've got speeder bike racing, and we've got droid programming up there, and Star Typer, and some of the very early games that we added in. You can give Jar Jar a toss if you want. It's Dum Dum in. It's always fun. It never gets old to play that. Republic Defender is actually still my favorite mini game. I can play that for a long time. Just a great occupier, lots and lots of fun. And then we had to start doing some brand development. When you make a game, you can't just have a bunch of stuff in it. You also have to kind of wrap it up in something that's cohesive. And we wanted to carry through, from obviously what the guys at LEC had established, and give it its own kind of spin, but keep it in line with everything. So these were some early logos that we didn't go with, and then the one that we did go with. And this was sort of our key art, which is basically anything that we would wrap any sort of promotional material in would have been based on this. And you can see that these are the older versions of Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan, and clone armor, which have been updated. And we've updated all that over time too. So here's a sneak peek at sort of the pipeline of how you'd make a character from start to scratch. And we're going to be looking at the concept to completion of the Tauntaun, which is going to be a new mount, which obviously has never been in the Clone Wars cartoons, but is something from the Star Wars universe that we thought would be really cool to put in the game. And it's actually going live tomorrow. Cool. So this is the first peek. This is our artist Jeff, and he's doing a concept sketch. And then go on to the modeling phase. Starts very rough and just kind of evolves. When you're modeling, you lay out UVs, which are basically the coordinate space that the texture is applied to. And then here's where the texture is being painted. Go ahead and apply that to the model. And then it needs to get rigged up so that the animations will work. So we add a skeleton to it. There's bones that are being put together. And then we go ahead and animate it. Yeah, he's in his underwear.
No.
So in this tool, it's where we hook up all the animations. We make a lot of different animations for all the characters, and we use a separate tool to put them together. And then we take it into the client and see what it looks like in the game right here. And this is a quick view of what our environment artists would do. So when we're making a level, you're going to see sort of the process of making Umbara, which we released that zone for combat. So he's just painting in some little foothills. Through after some iteration, it gets more evolved. We go ahead and add in some of those cool tentacles in the airfield and start getting the lighting established, and that's what it ended up looking like in game. Yeah, I thought that might get a laugh. Yeah, so we've worked really closely with LEC on this game, and we have to because Star Wars is such an important brand, and we need to make sure that we're not going off in the wrong direction. So every last piece of art that we put in the game is submitted for approval, and we never tried to put in the Enterprise. I just use that as an example of something that would obviously be wrong. We've also been able to get a lot of the art assets from the cartoon that we can use in the game, but since the assets are so high res, we have to take them through a process of reducing. So you can see that on the right there, we've got a character that's 64,000 triangles, and we've reduced it down to 5,300 for gameplay purposes. So then we launched the game. That's the next step. We finished our goals for alpha and beta. We got the game all finished up, and we've had millions of people playing the game now. So it's gone well, and we've updated it since then. We've made sure that as the episodes air, we've got fresh content going to the game at every step. So if there's some cool items or wearables or mounts or pets that we can pull from the episodes, we make sure that we get those in the game so that you guys can enjoy them. Here's a trailer that we put out after we launched, showcasing some of the content we've done up until a trade show that we did in summer of 2011.
The galaxy has descended into conflict. War has erupted on countless worlds, and the forces of the Republic are all that stand against the rising tide of the dark side. The Jedi Order needs heroes like you. Protect the cloning facilities of Kamino from the Separatists. Defend the Twi'lek homeworld of Rydon. Overcome the dark side on Dathomir, and stop the droid armies at all costs. Whether you're leading the Republic in battle, getting your droids combat ready, or a distant world, become the Jedi you were destined to be. Clone Wars intentions, the Force is in you.
So you can see in there, we updated the game with a lot of really cool areas that have both been in the show and haven't. I mean, we haven't seen Mustafar yet in the show, but we do have Mustafar in the game, which is one of my favorite areas. But at the same time, we added in Kamino as that story went through, and we've managed to put in a lot of really cool stuff. And then, like I said earlier, as the characters have been updated in the show, we make sure that we update them in the game. game so that you guys are always seeing what the coolest, freshest versions are. And then we had this awesome opportunity between Season 3 and Season 4 to work directly with LEC and Dave Maloney worked on the story for it, and we were able to put in basically a chunk of content that was going to tie together what happened when Season 3 ended and Season 4 started. And that was the mission on Iceberg 3. So here's the trailer for that.
The situation here is worse than we expected. Only one planet stands between us and our base, and we need your help to fight through the enemy fleet. May the Force be with you.
One of my favorite things about that particular opportunity we had to add that story into the game was that we got to make Iceberg 3, which doesn't exist anywhere except out of the extended universe content. So while it already existed in story, nobody had seen what it looked like. So we had the opportunity to create that environment from scratch. And you know, the Clone Wars Adventures players were the first ones to really get to check it out. And then one of the coolest features that we've added since launch that I talked about earlier was combat. And we released that as the Umbara arc concluded in the show. And this environment was just so much fun to make. And we introduced the player mount. You can see the ATRTs up there. The combat system is just a cool way to actually get to go in and adventure as your character and you know, basically kick some droid butt. It's awesome. Another cool feature that we've added since launch are mystery crates. You know, these you get from playing mini games, and you can buy an access code to get something random. We just launched the set that has a whole unique set of different Sith items. You can get different Sith items for your house, or different Sith wearables or weapons. We've had a lot of feedback from the players that they want to see more cool Sith stuff, so we've been really trying to put it in. We just launched the Card Assault minigame. We had Card Commander, which was the first trading card game that we had, and now we've got Card Assault, which has a bit more of a strategic edge to it. It's a bit deeper than the old game, and I think it's a lot of fun. And then obviously we supported Darth Maul coming back in a big way. Definitely wanted to make sure that the players had an opportunity to fight against him. So we put together a mini dungeon of the Sith Academy. And here's the trailer for that. So that kind of wraps up what I had to show. I hope it was interesting. I know that sometimes talking about how stuff gets made can get a little boring. So hope it wasn't too boring. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd like to open the floor. Yeah.
I had a question about upcoming stuff. Do we expect anything on Mandalore?
Well, Not sure what I'm allowed to talk about.
They said you can talk about everything.
Yeah, I'll say no for now. Yes.
Okay, this is more a question about the industry itself.
Okay.
But how much interplay, or in some cases friction, would you say there was between the artistic and the technical sides?
So the restriction between the artistic and the technical side?
The friction.
Oh, the friction.
And interplay, you know?
Well, I mean, can you get just a little more specific? Are you talking about like polygon limitations, or are you talking about like
times when the two departments often run into problems with each other?
Well, okay, so in my experience, I didn't really see this on the development of Clone Wars, but I've definitely seen cases where you've got some artists that might want to push the boundaries of what the engine or the client can handle. And yeah, sometimes the programmers will come down and they'll say, you know, yes, that looks very nice, but we need to make a game that will actually run. So yeah, there can be some friction in the industry for sure, but you know, as long as we establish a good set of rules that the artists can follow, I haven't really had any issues with that. Anyone else? Oh, and as people are starting to head out, make sure that you grab some swag on the way out. We've got a season pass card for everybody here, as well as a TCG item redemption card.
Are you able to play as a Mandalorian, like Death Watch?
We do sell Death Watch gear that you can buy in game. Yeah. Yes.
Do you use the voice actors from the Clone Wars shows?
That's a good point. That actually should have made it into this presentation. Yes, he asked if the voice actors do the voiceovers in the show, and absolutely. We've had all of the voice talent from the show used throughout the game.
Whose idea is it that says, hey, let's make a Star Wars game, and how do you go about getting the license?
He asked, you know, whose idea is it that we're going to make a Star Wars game, and then how do we, you know, go about getting the licenses for it? You know, that's usually some game designer might be really excited about Star Wars and wants to make that game, and then comes up with a, you know, some way to turn it into a game, not just, okay, this is Star Wars and it's a game. Like, what is it? What are the guts of it? You know, how is that game? And then, you know, that kind of, as I was saying, through the pitch process, that has to go up to somebody who's going to then interact with the licensing group, you know, whether it is a Star Wars license or some other product, and then the maintenance of that relationship is, you know, very important once it is established.
So essentially, you come up with the idea, you come up with the pitch, you give it to your boss, whatever, and then he talks to Lucas or
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there may be some other instances in the industry where somebody might be contracted to work on a product where the licensor might, you know, go talk to somebody else. I mean, it can really work both ways. It just kind of depends on what your goal is, I guess. Yes.
You were talking about some of the development solutions. Can you explain deep a little bit more?
Yeah, so the Deep engine basically was just a tool set that we built in-house, and similar to something like the Unreal Developer Kit or, you know, any of the other software packages that you can use to develop a game that are out there. This is just something that we happen to build in-house, and a lot of the goals for it were that we wanted something that could stream down from the web, so that you could, you know, load that client on the fly. And then it also included like our artist composition tools, which would be, you know, where the assets are all assembled with the different shader technology, and then the terrain editor that we use, and then all of the designer tools. So that's just kind of like a system, and that's been evolving over time. We still use that in-house, although we're no longer calling it Deep. Yes.
Production of the whole game.
stuff is domestic, or do we farm all our things out?
For this game, everything was done in-house. Well, domestic. With an exception of a couple of the mini games, but those were still worked on domestic. They weren't outsourced overseas. Yes.
Just real quick, how long does it take? I guess that each game is different, the time frame was.
Yeah, so she asked what the time frame is for game development, and honestly, there's nothing that is rigid. I worked on EverQuest 2, and I was on that project for 5.5 years before it launched. And then Clone Wars, for example, we were able to launch it in about a year and a few months. And that was because we leveraged a lot of existing technology that we already had. So it just kind of depends on what you're starting with.
Are there any plans to port this to the PS3?
I don't know if there are. Fair question.
What are some of the main factors involved deciding when to use those, like third-party tools versus making in-house tools and software?
That's a good question about whether we're going to use in-house or third-party tools. I think a lot of what comes into play is the cost and taking a look at what we already have established. We have a core technology group at SOE, and that group is responsible for basically maintaining the tool set that the Deep Engine evolved from. So we're going to continue to use that technology, and it's hard to justify when you have that going on in-house to go outside. But if you were a smaller startup studio and you needed a tool set, and you didn't have a big programming budget, but you could go out and license something, that might be an opportunity that a smaller development studio would pursue.
Say an individual has an idea for a game. When you're going to get a development team put together, how many people do you need in each of the categories to talk about, and how do you go about getting that?
That's a good question. So he's asking, when you're going to pitch a game, how many people do you staff in each of the different groups, and where's that kind of come from? So it's hard to say, and I think that if you ask an artist or a designer or a programmer, they'd probably all tell you that there should be more of them. But in my opinion, the most important thing to have is the technology side first, because you need to know how the game is going to function, and the function needs to precede the form. So while I think it's important to have someone who's a visual, asset creator or a concept artist, I don't think you need a lot of those types. You need more of the designers. You need a good, strong head on your design team, and then you need the programmers that can make it all come together. And then once you have that core established, then you start building it out.
What kind of education do you need to become a designer or programmer for a game series?
That's another good question. So regarding experience and education, I've seen cases where some people have become designers or even programmers without any real formal education, just in that they've participated in those types of activities on their own. Or they've had the opportunity to sort of start at the bottom in a company. I'm actually an example of that. While I'm not a programmer or a designer, I started out at SOE before it was even SOE. It was called Variant Interactive. I was a customer service rep. And I had some experience in art. I had no formal training, and I was able to train through over the course of 14 years. And I've seen designers and programmers do the same, but then I've seen people who've gone to formal colleges for that, for programming. It just depends. I mean, if you're capable, that is usually more important than having a certificate.
What kind of differences are there in creating a game like Clone Wars Adventures from something like The Old Republic? Is there any difference?
Aside from the technical limitations between the two, and that they are very different games, I mean, while technically they're both massively multiplayer online games, The Old Republic is obviously a more classic MMO, so the system mechanics are a lot more in-depth. And for Clone Wars Adventures, we wanted more of a true arcade kind of feel with the mini-games. So things are a bit more compartmentalized, and everything hasn't had to tie itself in with every other system in the same way. So it's just one is definitely less complicated than the other. Yes.
Me way back here?
Yeah.
Something I've always wondered about video game development is that how do you guys decide between the first person perspective and like a third person perspective?
That's a tough thing to answer, because I think there's a lot of different players that have their own preferences on that, and it's hard to cater to everybody, especially when you're considering what type of gameplay you have. So, for example, in Clone Wars, we went with the third-person perspective because we wanted to have a click-to-move mechanic that was easy to understand. So we didn't think that we'd be able to accomplish that very well in a first-person camera. Just because if you wanted to move behind you, you'd have to literally turn around and go that direction. So that was kind of why we did that.
Last question.
Okay, one more? Yes.
Do you ever feel limited by the technical specifications of the systems that you're using? Say, I'm trying to use Flash Player and the action script on this, or did you feel that it was satisfactory to get you to where you were? Because I mean, you had a lot of the arcade style inside the game. Did you ever say, I want to take it beyond an arcade style for a mini game, and realize that you couldn't do that because of those technical specifications? Or was that more of an artistic decision?
No, that was, I mean, we had some designers on the team that were able to use those tools already, and we thought that they would work well for what we were trying to do, but I definitely saw some limitation by using those specific tools over the course of time. And there were certain mini games that we had to go outside of that realm in order to accomplish. So yeah, I would say that those were limiting factors. But it just happened to work for our needs as we were initially developing the game. All right. Well, really thanks for everybody sitting in and checking out the behind the scenes of Clone Wars Adventures, and thanks for playing.